Hey there and welcome back to Remnant 2. We are going to be using the Onyx Pendulum today, and this thing, on one of my last videos I said I didn't like it, and that's still mostly true. I don't really like it. It has grown on me a bit. I think it has some cool mechanics to play with. The idea of it is nice, like on paper, but then the reality of how you use it and how it ends up working is just not super amazing. And I think it's an amulet that came from Remnant from the Ashes, and from my understanding, because I don't really remember using it in that game, I didn't spend as much time playing Remnant from the Ashes, but my understanding is that it was quite a bit better in that one. And this one, it needs some love. Now, if you're not familiar with it, when you deal damage with your firearm, it adds stacks of damage that increase the damage of your stowed firearm. So if you deal damage with your long gun, you're going to get a stacking damage buff to your handgun. If you deal damage with your handgun, it gives you a stacking damage buff to your long gun. This can stack up to 10 times, giving you a total of 25% damage boost to either one of your weapons. So you can have 10 stacks of them on both weapons up at the same time, so that both of your guns are doing 25% more damage. And that's a pretty reasonable amount of damage, right? Like most of your other amulets are only doing like a 15 to 20% damage increase, with some having like a temporary like 30% more or something, right? Like the Ankh of Power, 15%, but then you use a relic, gives it a double boost for 15 seconds. The Chains of Amplification, 20%. The Cause of Betrayal, 20%. Difference engine 20%, etc., right? So, I mean, 25% is a reasonable amount. The bad thing is that it only applies to your gun's damage. It doesn't do status effects, doesn't do skills. It's literally just the guns. So if you're mixing in other damage types with it, it's not going to boost those damages at all. And the other bad thing is, and this is really the main part, because I can get over the idea of it like only doing my firearms, like that's fine. I can play around with it. I can do a build where it's just focused on the guns and swapping between them, which I like the idea of, and that's what I'm doing on this build. However, it takes so long to build it up, where most of your other ones, it's just an immediate pow, here's damage, right? This one, you have to deal damage with one gun to increase the damage of your other one. But most of the time, by the time you're done like finishing enemies with one gun and you switch to the other one, they're gone, right? That the fight's over. Or if you get up to an actual reasonable amount of stacks, again, the fight is over. The only time it's really getting any mileage is on a boss fight, and even then you still have to like really work to get it up to speed, and then you have to make sure you're constantly like building it up and doing damage, which I mean you should be continuously dealing damage anyways. It's a boss fight. But still, it's very hard to build up the stacks because they build slowly and they build inconsistently, which is really the biggest thing I dislike about it. One, it takes so long to get the damage bonus like fully up and running, and then it just doesn't make sense how it works because, again, on paper, it's just like deal damage and then there it is. But it doesn't specify it, right? It doesn't say deal X amount of damage to get a stack. It doesn't say deal 40% of your weapon's magazine damage to gain a stack. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says deal damage. And then when I've been testing it, I keep getting different values for the same guns to different guns for different reasons, and it just, like, it doesn't make sense. Most of the time, it seems like I need to deal around 2,000 damage, and then I get a stack of the buff. And that's like roughly a quarter of my weapon's magazine. So like if I'm using not the Merciless, we're gonna ignore that one for right now. But if I use like the Black Maw, I have to use about a quarter of its magazine, or like 9 shots or something like that, right? And then do 2,000 damage with it, and then it gives me 1 stack. And so by the time I've cleared out like the entire magazine, and if I deal like about 8,000 damage, then I have 4 stacks of damage bonus to my handgun, which unfortunately is only a 10% damage increase. Like I've emptied my entire magazine and I just got a 10% damage increase to my handgun. I mean, it's more damage, but it's not even breaking even with a lot of the other amulets yet. And then if I switch to my handgun, again, I have to deal so much damage. So then I go back to my long gun, and then my long gun is dealing another 10% more damage. Like, I love the idea of just using one, emptying my clip, and then when I switch to my other gun, bam, 25% more damage on that side gun. Awesome. I think that would be great, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't do that. And then it's like, well, is it based on magazine capacity, like how much of your magazine you're using and the damage compared to like the magazine's damage amount or whatever? And it's not that either, because if I use, say, the Widowmaker and I use 100% of its magazine to deal damage, sometimes I don't get any stacks on a shot. I get nothing. And then sometimes I deal like 3,000 damage on a single shot. No stack. No stack to the pendulum. But then sometimes I do like 1,000 damage on one shot, have no stacks, and then I get a stack. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's so weird. And then like the Twisted Arbalist, this thing stacks it up like crazy because it ricochets a shot, and suddenly next you know, one shot, if it ricochets 4 times, for some reason, immediately I've got like 4 stacks. Why can't I get a single stack on every single shot of the Widowmaker? Why doesn't that one work? Why, if I empty the entire magazine of the Wrangler, do I have only like 2 stacks? It's so inconsistent. It's really annoying, and I hate it. And, you know, that's not even accounting for some of the handguns where you think, like, well, maybe it's about hitting them a bunch of times. And so if I go and I'm like, well, let me use my Tech 22, and I empty a full clip hitting them a whole bunch of times, or the MP60, wherever it's at, you know, whatever. Nope. It's still like, I empty an entire clip, deal like 4,000 damage, maybe like 2 stacks. And then I have to empty an entire another clip just to get another 2 measly stacks. Very, very frustrating. And it behaves weirdly with things too. So like the bleed effect from Merciless, not from the twisting wounds, but the actual gun's bleed effects, that bleeding damage will give it stacks. For some reason that triggers the Onyx Pendulum, and I don't know why. Because like this one does it, Corrupted Merciless, that one triggers it. The Sparkfire Shotgun, its burning effect, also triggers it. So I mean, it makes sense. I'm like, okay, the status effect is still like the gun's damage, and so that's why it's giving it stacks. And so then I go to my handguns and I use the Nebula, which does corrosion, right? That builds up stacks. But then if I try the Hellfire, guess what? The burning damage from this one doesn't build up stacks. Why not? Why does this one not work? Why does this one work? What do the other two do? Why does the Enigma, which hits a bunch of enemies at once, kind of like the Twisted Arbalist, why does this give me like no stacks at all, but the Twisted Arbalist immediately gives me like 4 stacks? It's so ridiculous. It's really frustrating because I like the idea of being able to just swap back and forth between my guns and keep building up damage, which is what I've built around. So ignoring the actual amulet being very frustrating, right? Here's what I've got going on. We've got the Gunslinger as my primary because we've got the Sidewinder skill. When you activate this, anytime you swap your weapons, automatically reloads them, gives you faster swap speed, faster aim down sights, and everything like that. It's kind of nice. I never really used it before this. It's okay. It's okay. It's not amazing, honestly. Hunter and Hunter's Mark because it just feeds really nicely into I'm dealing ranged damage. Now, because I'm going to be swapping weapons all the time, I'm using the Provisioner's Ring, because what I want to do is shoot a bunch with my long gun, swap to my handgun, shoot some with that, swap back to the long gun, and then in between swaps, my guns are just automatically reloading, so I can constantly be dealing damage with one gun then the other, so I'm constantly building up stacks between my guns. Unfortunately, it just takes so long to build stacks that in the end, it kind of doesn't matter. But Provisioner's Ring is really fun for this. Blood Tinge Ring, because I am using the Merciless. And I feel sort of bad for using it because I don't think the Pendulum is supposed to work with a bleeding effect. It doesn't make sense that it does. It's not supposed to. So I feel bad because I typically try to avoid using any kind of bugs or something like that. But this amulet is so frustrating. I feel like it's owed to me because it's still not very good, even though I don't know, exploiting a bug or something. I am using the Offering Stone, so when we deal range damage, it increases all of our damage by 1% for 1 second, stacks up to 15 times, and if we kill an enemy, it'll then last for 10 seconds. So I'm using this because the Onyx Pendulum doesn't actually increase any of my other damage other than my range damage. So this kind of covers some of my other things. I was also using the Nebula for a bit, so I was using both bleeding and corrosion. So being able to increase all my damage was kind of nice. And then I've got the Phase Shaman Ring on. Gives me a little bit more health regeneration. I've got a bunch of different sources of health regeneration right now. And then Relic Use Speed. So with the Tranquil Heart, which does health regeneration. and we use their Tranquil Heart, it activates faster now. It doubles all our regeneration, and since a Phase Shaman Ring gives us regeneration, Tranquil Heart has us regeneration. We've got the Regrows trait, which gives us regeneration. And then, I don't know if it actually counts, but we've got regeneration from Blood Tinged Ring whenever there's bleeding. So in theory, we could be getting a ton of double regeneration from this. I also put in ranged crit chance, health, and ranged crit damage in this thing, just for, we're doing a lot of range stuff. I mentioned using the Merciless. This is my gun. I found that the automatic weapons just seem to work best with the Pendulum. I did put Twisting Wounds in there just because I want more efficient ways of adding bleeding that don't rely on me just shooting for a long time to trigger it. And the extra 20% damage to bleeding targets is just kind of nice too. The melee weapon is not important. I'm just using the Flail and Shocker because I don't know. I have no reasons for that. Corrupted Rune Pistol. This one works pretty well with it. The other Rune Pistol works as well too. It's an automatic one. It does solid damage. It seems to stack up reasonably well with the Pendulum. But like I said, if you wanted to run the Nebula using the corrosion effect, this would help you to get more stacks. But overall, when I was using the Nebula, it just wasn't building up very much stacks for my long gun. So I swapped over to the Corrupted Rune Pistol. I also put Refunder in there because we're swapping between weapons so often that if I can get these shots giving me ammo back to my reserves, I can constantly be reloading my guns because they're automatically reloading when they're stowed. So I kind of like the idea of it, and I think it's working out okay. Is it the best choice? Probably not. You could put something else in there. Kill Switch works pretty well because we are swapping our guns all the time. Armor-wise, I just have the Challenger or the Bruiser set on because that's, again, just what I felt like using. Heavy protective gives me a decent amount of damage reduction. I have 51%. Unfortunately, I'm at a heavyweight, so you got to kind of bear that in mind. And then our traits, it's the ammo reserves, long shots, and then just from our traits or our archetypes. And then the rest of it is pretty standard, I'm on Apocalypse difficulty. Max stacks and regrowth, Fortify, Vigor's maxed out. I've got Spirit maxed, Expertise maxed, Siphoner as well because I was, using bleeding effects, double bleeding effects, constantly doing range damage, using corrosion effects. So getting some, work out of the lifesteal kind of helped us out. Maxed out handling because I was messing around with shotguns a little bit, but the handling helps us to recoil quite a bit too. Fitness, so our evade distance is a little bit better. And then, a couple points endurance, a couple points into recovery for a little bit of stamina, quality of life. All right, so we're in the Shattered Gallery. Let's go ahead and clear that out. I mean, there's not going to be any fancy things to see with the gameplay, right? It's not like some of your, crazy amulets and things that have, super mechanics, or I'm not doing some crazy spam thing. It's just focused around me swapping weapons. It is really satisfying to just swap weapons back and forth, and not actually have to reload them. And then maybe in theory we'll see me actually get some damage stacks going on. I mean, like that, we have 2 stacks to our handgun. We have 1 stack to our what's it called, long gun. And then in theory, right, we keep going, and then we want to really try to go back to back in combat because otherwise we end up losing out on these damage stacks. So we're going to go back to the long gun and try and deal some damage before, the stack goes away. And then we go back over and then we swap it over, and this way we just never reload. We're constantly moving, constantly dealing damage. And so, I mean, this overall setup is fun, the basic core of it. Swap weapons, deal damage, keep going like that, right? But ultimately, the weakest part is actually the Pendulum. We would be better doing some other amulet, right? But see, we're still at 3 stacks. And so how much damage is that? 6-8% extra damage? Are we actually getting any value out of it? No, we're not, unfortunately, because, by the time we have those stacks, we're not fighting anybody anymore. Now, maybe if we get, a horde going on, or an elite, then we could see some value. But until that happens, it's not going to happen. Cool thing is, right, we've got the Offering Stone building up some nice little stacks there. And as long as we actually, finish enemies, it's got a extra duration, so it doesn't actually run out. Let's activate this now, because I thought I heard something else, I guess. Oh, if we get that bleeding. Unfortunately, that's not the actual, merciless bleeding, so it's not going to build up any stacks to the Pendulum. Let's go, guys. Come on. Now, in one of these fights, I'll pull out the, use a Sidewinder. But, I mean, you can see it, right? We're at a max stacks of Offering Stone, which is cool. But, unfortunately, one, that just wore off because we didn't get into a fight. And then, two, we didn't actually, like, we're not dealing any more damage. So, like, we're losing out on stacks of Pendulum. And now we just keep swapping back and forth every time we finish, guys. There we are. Stay away, please, while the bleed finishes him. There we go. Now, you gotta be kind of careful. If you spend too long in one of your guns and you just keep shooting it, you know, you're gonna run out of ammo on it, and then you probably will have to reload, unless you swap and then get enough back. So some of the long engagements, if you're not, like, managing the rotation right, the refill rate versus your fire rate can be a little off, so you can find yourself not actually, like, fully maxing out your gun. And then at that point, that's when you really need to rely on the Sidewinder. You activate Sidewinder, then your things just start auto-reloading whenever you swap, and you're good to go from there. So get that on. There's double stacks of bleeding, and he's gone. And, I mean, one dude down, one stack for each thing. I mean, it's not helping us kill guys. It's not, yeah, it's just not great. I don't know what else to say. I mean, that being said, I mean, I've been clearing levels with it. And, you know, I took out Nightweaver. I took out some other boss. I don't remember which one that was. But, you know, you can do things with it because the basic setup is kind of good in a way. And you can go through like that. So maybe we'll get some decent work here. Oh, away from you. Now, where are your friends? Here we go. There we go. Now we're good. But now, we'll see how many stacks we end up with at the end of the fight, right? By swapping around. Let's go ahead and activate this now. And then we swap it over. Swap it over. We'll just keep swapping like this. And what did we end up with? We didn't even max them out. We didn't max any of them out. We got 6 and 9, which is unfortunate. Didn't even max out stacks. Wow. That's frustrating, dude. But we'll try the boss. The boss, we should be able to max him out, right? Because it's going to take us longer than a minute to take him down, you know, unfortunately. So here we go. See how it goes. I haven't even used my relic at all. So maybe we'll see how this works. Hunter's Mark, Thick Skin, Drain. Let's go ahead and use this skill right now. Get this kind of stacked up. We'll get those double stacks of bleeding. Now, long course of this fight, that bleeding is really going to help us out with the stacks for our handgun. So our handgun is going to do some nice, solid damage, you know, which will be kind of nice. And then we just got to make sure I'm actually, like, swapping in a good, like, rotation. That was really nice of him to not hit me because I would have died there. That was really clutch. Really clutch of that guy to help me out. Because I didn't think freaking Dulane was going to swing their staff. There we are. Are we at max stacks yet? We got max on the handgun, but not on the, not on our long gun, which is unfortunate. And, I mean, how many bullets have we spent from our handgun trying to get stacks, right? And still not maxed out. That's, like, really frustrating. I'm stuck a little bit. And as soon as we, like, stop dealing damage for any consistent amount of time, we end up losing out on those damage bonuses, right? Something else I should mention too, right? The mods, not adding stacks to it. So if we use a mod from our Merciless, that doesn't add any stacks to the Pendulum. So that's not going to help us out, which is kind of why I haven't been using it. Is because it just kind of takes away from me, like, focusing on just shooting things. And so I'm just not really thinking about it, right? I should also state, right? So like I said, the bleeding effect from the, God, I forgot how slow that swing is. You know, the bleed effect is giving us stacks, as is the corrosion from Nebula. If you are running the Ritualist and you take an enemy out, oops, and then it spreads thanks to the Ritualist Prime perk, guess what? All those things will build up stacks of Pendulum, which is really crazy because, man, let me tell you, to see your stacks go up real fast because there's suddenly 6 dudes who are bleeding is really satisfying, but you know it's not supposed to work that way, which is very unfortunate. Let's activate this. Are we at max stacks yet? Yep, we are, finally. Sometimes what I like to do in boss fights, instead of running the Offering Stone, because the Offering Stone here, not super amazing, right? Because we're not really, like, killing enemies. So it's only lasting as long as we're shooting enemies. So at this point, I like to switch to like the Stone of Balance, maybe Burden of the Destroyer, something like that, and just go from there. Oh, I'm in trouble. I rolled too early. I panic rolled because I saw like a flyer do to something, and then I was like, oh no, now they're doing, and then my second roll was a little too early too. Yeah, just panicked a little bit, which is unfortunate because we were doing really well. You know, we'll finish him. I'll take care of him. But maybe I'll switch handgun, right? Unfortunately, corrosion doesn't do anything, but let's try a different handgun and see how that one kind of feels. All right, so I put on the Rupture Cannon. Rupture Cannon I've been enjoying doing this on. I don't know if that's particularly efficient or anything like that. But we put Fargazer. Fargazer works out pretty well for us here because when you activate the mod, it doesn't matter which gun is out. As long as you're aiming at enemies, it does a stack. So this is pretty good for our weapon swapping setup. And then Kill Switch is just great because we're, you know, swapping weapons all the time. And let's go ahead and swap out the Offering Stone. We'll just go ahead and put on the Stone of Balance because we can, right? Stone of Balance, that's it. All right, let's rest, get our mod charged, and let's see how the fight goes. Start with a Hunter's Mark, move forward, and activate the Fargazer and start shooting. Now make sure you do a few shots and then swap it over. Can't believe that clipped me. Bang, 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 bang. Swap it over. Roll away from those. A couple more shots, swap it. A couple more shots, and just go like that, right? I really thought that I put the kill switch in there. Yeah, there it was. It's really weird going from a fully automatic weapon to a semi-automatic because I just am not ready for that requirement to click a bunch of times. And that's messing me up a little bit. But I mean, the Fargazer Madness is really strong. So like, it works out really well for us here. Let's go ahead and activate this here now. Swap it. Boom, boom, boom. Swap it. There we go. Oh. Oh, staying away. Oh, yeah, that was close. Watching out for that other body. Yeah, you hear that sound. You got to make sure you're careful. Find some distance. Let's activate the Fargazer now. And just circle things a little bit. There we are. And then get some extra damage over time. That'll be good. Can't believe that hit me too. Oh, of course the body got me. I was so focused in on dodging that one shot that I was like, I ignored the flying bodies. And I don't know that I could have actually dodged the body and then avoided the one shot because of the timing between the two. That's really unfortunate. Alright, so apparently me beating this boss today is just not going to happen. I didn't come home from work to get randomly clipped by bodies for half an hour and get one shot. So, I mean, I could do the fight, but I keep messing it up, and I keep dying, and I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. I want to do something fun. Like, I sort of enjoy this build, but man, I swear, you know what? Here's the test. I'm gonna put on a different amulet, and we'll see if I win it straight away. That would be funny, right? We'll try that. That'll be my last attempt, but I'm pretty much over it. Maybe we do Ankh of Power. That's just a straight 15% damage increase. Like, maybe we just do that. Never mind. Doesn't matter. If you're still getting hit by bodies at dying, it doesn't matter how much damage you do if you just get hit and die. So, thanks for checking out the video. I always really appreciate it. The freaking Onyx Pendulum, dude. I should be cool, should be fun and great, but it doesn't make sense. It's too slow, and it only does firearm damage. Only doing firearm damage, not really a problem if it just wasn't slow. If it wasn't slow, then I wouldn't even care that it was weird. But it's weird, and it's slow. I can't, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm going to go to play something, build that is fun, that I enjoy. Thanks again. Thanks again for checking it out. Always appreciate it. I'm going to try and be a little more consistent. Work should be easier now, so it should be... I should have more willpower. More energy and willpower to do things. So, until the next one, take care.